Hi, all. Welcome. I'm Jen Jordan. I lead content and thought leadership at Insight Partners, which includes the Scale Up AI conference coming here on November 12th. Scale Up AI is our thought leadership event, bringing together AI builders, innovators, enterprise executives, other investors, and academics in a one-day content-packed event full of insights and inspiration. And this year we have AI legendary folks, Andrew Ng and Ali Miller keynoting. Our speakers today are pleased to offer you 35% off a virtual ticket for the event. The code and website will appear below during the chat. So as this preamble to Scale Up AI, I'm excited to introduce this fireside discussion with one of our AI portfolio companies. Please welcome Skyflow CEO Anshu Sharma and Insight Partners Managing Director George Matthew to the stage. Take it away, George.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate the introduction. Anshu, thank you so much for joining us today. And welcome to Scale Up AI Soundbites. This is a series of AI-centric LinkedIn live sessions that we have prominent folks from the Insight Partners portfolio really helping chat through the shaping of the future of AI. These talks are meant to be a bit of a preamble for the main stage coming up at Scale Up AI on November 12th. One of the leading global conferences that brings together, as Jen indicated, top AI builders, executives, luminaries, and innovators. So, Anshu, we have a lot to talk about today. We're thrilled to have you. Skyflow has been incredibly busy this past year, and thank you again for being a Scale Up AI partner this year. So let's get right to it. Maybe as an intro, Anshu, why don't you just say hello and introduce yourself and Skyflow, and I'll get right into some of the questions that I want to make sure we cover with you today.
Awesome, George. Well, it's a pleasure to be on this podcast, I suppose is the word that I would use. But
Video and
a
podcast,
video,
right? So,
yeah,
yeah.
video cast. There's a lot of fun, a lot of things going on in AI. Happy to chat with you. And of course, happy to have you as our board member.
And do you want to say a little bit about Skyflow and what you've been up to
Oh,
as well? And
yes.
then, yeah, that little
Yes.
detail. Yes.
Yes. So for those of you who don't know Skyflow, we are a company that's focused on only one thing, which is when we as customers engage with businesses, we give them a lot of personal information, whether you want to pick up a cup of coffee at Starbucks 5 minutes from now or apply for a mortgage 2 years from now. Every interaction requires some personal information, and increasingly agents and AI are going to be also requiring this information. So how do you make sure in this world where our personal information is the currency of exchange to get anything of value, whether getting an Uber to like getting a mortgage? How do you protect this thing? Because unlike your passwords, you can't reset your social security number. I can't change my date of birth just yet. So that's the mission of Skyflow, and we basically decided the way to solve this problem is to think about it fundamentally differently as a data problem rather than as a cybersecurity tooling problem. So we call ourselves a Skyflow Data Privacy Vault Company, and we go after use cases ranging from transactional data, things that you give companies when you're booking a reservation, to analytical data, things companies analyze to figure out how much they should charge you and what they should upsell to you, to generative AI, where chatbots and agents want to do this on behalf of you or just engage in a conversation with you. So across all of these use cases, we offer them our data privacy platform that secures the data end to end.
Amazing. And so, Anshu, let's talk a little bit about this now in terms of where we're seeing this current wave of what would be pretty much anyone considers transformational as far as the arrival of AI technology at scale. And let's compare it a little bit to where we've seen the past waves of innovation. You and I were very involved with, some of the cloud transformation and mobile wave that certainly occurred at certain periods of time. Both of us were at Salesforce. Can you kind of just superimpose a little bit more of what and where you're seeing this tremendous opportunity emerge in AI in comparison to the last waves of technology innovation that we've been part of?
Yeah, so I even wrote a blog post about this recently, and the thought is this is the first revolution I've been part of where it's obvious not just to technologists like you and I, but it's also obvious to the average person. So if you go back in time, all the way to 1950s when we were doing censuses with computers, the average guy had no idea, right? Till 30 years later, they got calculators. But PCs took 15, 20 years to hit the home. Mobile devices took 10, 15 years before they went from being, tech bros and finance bros to, being in our homes and hands with Steve Jobs taking it. What that meant was that the average person that's running a business, so if I'm running an air conditioner company or I'm running, a financial trading company, I can't quite always envision how this thing is going to play out. Why does, most banks actually banned things like iPhones and the internet for the first 15, 20 years because they couldn't envision in their heads why going to a website. And in those days, websites used to be just like HTML pages. Like, why would somebody in a bank go to a website? We don't think about this anymore because website and apps are the same thing. But there was a time when websites were not apps. So all of that, what that meant was it took 15 years for people to even figure out what they could do with a website, such as open a bank account. It took 10 years for people to figure out that you don't have to just text and call people on their phones. You can let them buy things. Most of you are listening probably buy everything using Apple Pay or Google Pay now. But even as recently as 5-6 years ago, that wasn't true for most of the world. I think AI is the first transformation we've had where this is not true. You're 14-year-old and the Uber driver and the CEO of an industrial manufacturing company with headquarters in Nigeria or Cambodia or Germany, they all have access to the same demo, if you will, called ChatGPT. It doesn't take a genius to figure out if I can ask it questions about, hey, can you solve this math problem for me? Or can you write this email for me? That is directly applicable to my business. And I think this change that takes 15 years has happened in less than 15 months. And that's why companies like OpenAI are so valued, because people grok this, people get this, and then it goes downstream all the way to NVIDIA's and other companies, because we're like, if this is true, then in 15 months, we figured out what we figured out in 15 years. And so everybody's all in. And that's why we are seeing a rapid adoption of this technology. But it also creates problems because we're trying to do in 15 months what we did in 15 years.
Yeah, and so that it's not just the fact that scale is happening as quick as it has, it's the speed at which this is all happening. And so let's kind of talk that through a little bit in terms of, as businesses are now trying to think through the use cases and the adoption of this wave of generative AI technologies that have come about, like, how does a business really bring this into the way they work and succeed, knowing that in many of the other ways prior to it, we've had, half a decade to decade and a half to adopt the systems that we're talking about. And now we're in a moment where, this wave, at least on the consumer side, has played out in under 15 months.
Yeah, I think it's happened around 15 months for consumers. Every leading enterprise software company has committed to agents. It used to be if you worked at a company that was from the last generation of technology. So if you worked at HP or Compaq, they would deny the existence of PCs for 5 years or 10 years before they jumped on it. This time around, nobody's denying it. The CEOs of SAP, Cisco, Oracle, they are on the same page as CEOs of ServiceNow, Salesforce, and who are on the same page as people founding companies like Sierra AI and others. There's almost no difference between how we all perceive this. This is like radical. What that means for a business is you're going to get messages from all of these people that reinforce what you know in your personal life, which is this thing is happening. Everybody believes it. There are no naysayers left. And the only question is, where are you going to get started? Are you going to build this AI yourself? Are you going to rent it from somebody? Are you going to customize it yourself? Are you going to work with a partner? Those kind of things come in, but people have started visualizing in their heads very easily, oh, I think people like Jamie Dimon, when they go on CNBC, they talk about this all the time. Yesterday, I was at the Bank of America Summit, and they were talking about this. They can all see the value of a branch manager that has to look at your loan application. Like, how many times do you go back and forth over email? For an average person, the way I say it is like, most of the work that we do these days is things like email and docs if you work in a process-oriented industry. And the database work has already been automated. None of us are sitting there calculating, how much mortgage we need to pay next month using a calculator. But all the process stuff, the document that you send to get your mortgage approved, the document they send to the auditors, the document they send to the compliance people who send them to the US government and other people, those things are not automated. They're still happening over file sharing and email and FTP. And it's intuitively clear that all of that is going to get automated, at least 60, 80% of it, using tools like LLMs. And so we are seeing this understanding. If I'm using text to do business, like I'm typing something up long or I'm reading a lot, GenAI can assist you, because GenAI is really good at two things: understanding a document, summarizing it. It's kind of not great at creating documents, but I think that's where people are making progress. Right now, it's mediated by humans. It does a really good
Sure.
job if you mediate with humans.
And when you think about the enterprise itself and the data security and privacy risks that are inherent already in most of these organizations, and now we layer in this AI set of systems that are generative in capability, like how do you think about that yourself? And then tell us a little bit about how Skyflow has really been producing products and capabilities for both non-generative AI as well as Gen AI use cases.
Yeah, so I think the best thing is to think about how you as a consumer interact. Even though I'm an enterprise software person, I'm interacting with my airline, my bank, my coffee company, and you soon realize that you basically giving them data. But if all I was trying to do is one transaction at a time, buy one ticket, and then not talk to an airline for 3 years, the amount of data I'm generating is maybe like, I don't know, worth 2 pages, mostly structured data. What that means is if an airline has 50 million customers and 200 million tickets sold a year, they basically have 200 million rows of data. But when they start moved into analytics and understanding you, they start buying things and not just seeing what you're buying, but also what you were clicking and copying and what you may be getting a hotel, buying third-party data. So now for each of those 50 million customers, instead of 4 rows of data, they may have 400 rows of data. That's an orders of magnitude increase. That's why companies like Snowflake and Databricks have had so much tremendous growth, because the amount of data companies need to just do the same transaction, which is sell me an airline ticket, requires 10 times to 100 times more data to do it at a higher success rate and more profitably. What's
And so
happening
let's
now?
extend that thinking a little bit, just to go into the customer data itself, because I want to spend a little bit of time with you on this, right? Because some of this customer data is needing to be managed from a privacy and security standpoint, but it's also some of the most valuable things that will go into imbuing a generative pre-trained transformer and an LLM that's specific to an organization. So just tell us a little bit more about how Skyflow and you are thinking about customer data itself, particularly going into training models.
Yeah, so PII, as we call it, the personal information, you need to protect it. And the problem is protection is easy if I can just lock it away. So traditional technologies like encryption and tokenization, they always offered these companies the opportunity to lock your data away. But the challenge is if I lock my data away of my customers, it's fine maybe if I'm transacting with you once a year and I can just unlock it and then say, okay, your social security number is X. But if I'm continuously interacting with you, that means I have to continuously figure out, is George in New York right now or is he in San Francisco right now? That requires the data to be accessible and available. So the false dichotomy of protection, which is what most of cybersecurity industry has been selling for decades, just doesn't work anymore. So that's why when I started Skyflow, we said the most important thing is actually not security. The most important thing is, can I use the data while it's secure? It's the use that's central to the business function and to the consumer, because that's what we want. Security is the risk we are taking on, and we want to minimize it to as close to zero possible. So with that in mind, we created a polymorphic encryption engine. We have a patent on that. What basically it means is I can actually do a lot of work with your data without actually ever converting it to plain text. If it's not in plain text, that means that when you're analyzing your 50 million people's, where are you flying, they don't need to know exactly my name. They just need to know that I fly to New York these days a lot to come and meet you, George. And then when they're using it with generative AI, it gets even more interesting because generative AI needs even more context. When you say words like natural language understanding, there is no understanding if I don't pass the context to this thing. So older techniques of redaction and encryption and tokenization just completely break down. With our polymorphic engine, you're able to actually interact with these models, build these models, and talk to these models with all the controls in place because you're not dealing with plain text data. But at the same time, you have governance rules imposed on it. You're trying to precisely figure out who in customer service, from what location, servicing you in what context. Are they trying to rebook your flight? Are they trying to give you free frequent miles? They're trying to open a credit card on your behalf. Each of these use cases, today it's customer service agents acting on your behalf, tomorrow it'll be agentic AI, but they need access. And this needs to be governed. Otherwise, the regulators are going to come and shut you down, which is already happening in some jurisdictions.
And in that regard, like, what are some great examples that we can tell this audience on customers of Skyflow that have been really benefited by the fact that they're using Skyflow to its fullest degree, particularly when it comes to data privacy? And that could be an AI use case and not an AI use case, but just a few stories of where you've seen customers be delighted with the use of Skyflow.
Awesome. I'll give you two. One is a company that's building a generative AI nurse that does most of the stuff that doesn't happen in the setting of a hospital. So imagine you're going to go for a procedure. They're going to call you up the night before, don't drink water. That call has to be made 4 times over, but can be done with an automated engine. To build this model, they need to capture a lot of data. All of that gets processed through Skyflow. And this company is doing amazingly well. They've raised $200 million now.
Right.
Second company is a company called GoodRx. They run, tens of millions of people's pharmacy benefits through their program, discount card, and they're actually able to run their entire business without any of their subsystems ever seeing George Matthews' social security number or phone number or mine, and they can still deliver you the exact same service. So when the CTO goes in front of the CEO or the board, he can say, look, I've been spending on cybersecurity for 15 years, but for the first time, I can tell you that our social security number, phone numbers, and email address are just not touching most of the systems ever in plain text. And that's the game-changing value here. They actually did a keynote presentation at the Databricks Summit because they're also a big Databricks customer. So check them out on GoodRx YouTube. But those are the kind of customers who are changing how we do business.
That's great. And Anshu, thank you again for spending some time with us, particularly on LinkedIn Live. It's an incredible story that you have really built with the rest of the team at Skyflow. We're honored to continue to work with you as investors. We're looking forward to spending more time together at Scale Up AI, and we appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation with you. Thank you again, Anshu.
Likewise, I'm excited to be there in New York for the Scale Up event.
All right, let's go.